Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football presented by BKCW. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined each and every morning by Bobby Burton and CJ Vogel. And guys, we're just a few days away, I guess I should say now, from the Sugar Bowl. Bobby, you're already over in New Orleans. The team is in New Orleans. What's happening over there down in Louisiana?
Well, I tell you what, I'm an early riser and always have been. And so I was up at 5 o'clock this morning, and I went for a walk to go see if something would be open around 6 this morning. And New Orleans is a night town, fellas. There's no restaurants, no Starbucks open at 6 a.m. near where I'm staying. So I didn't get my coffee until 7 o'clock. But other than that, the city is kind of buzzing. I came in last night, lots of Texas flags out, Washington flags out. Team hotels, you can see they're adorned with different flags, etc., all up and down Canal Street and in the French Quarter as well. Longhorns had their first walkthrough yesterday, a little practice, tempo practice. It could be said that the Longhorns are completely healthy. One of the things that has been talked about is whether or not Xavier Worthy was fully healed. He looked like he was full go yesterday. Austin Jordan is back on the field and practicing as well. The Longhorns, as you know, are going to miss Derek Williams for the first half. First team safeties yesterday, CJ and Blake, were a little surprising. Not only was it Michael Taft, who we've been expecting, but Keaton Crawford, first team safety reps in the early morning yesterday. So a lot of stuff going on here. I went and ate this morning. I finally got to a place called Mother's on Poydras Street. And this is they literally gave me this to show people how big their biscuits are. It's insane. But anyways, I really enjoying the time here so far. The city is buzzing, in my opinion. You can tell that there's a big game. Every time they show something on TV, they're talking about the Sugar Bowl, etc. So good times here in downtown New Orleans, getting ready for the game.
For sure. And you're not the only one on the road, though, Bobby. CJ is out way east over in Florida, in Orlando specifically. CJ, tell us what you got going on.
Yeah, I was going to say that the palm trees in the back are a little bit different than what we're used to. But, Bobby, unlike you, I'm a night owl through and through. So I just turned this late night drive down to Houston to catch the flight into an all-nighter. Kind of picked up a Red Bull around 2 o'clock and just called it a day. So hopped on the flight, and here we are. I got in about 3 minutes ago, found a table outside, and I don't know. If it was 10 degrees warmer, I'd be hopping in this pool here later on. But right now, I mean, we're looking forward to some All-American activity later today. A lot of the Texas commitments and signees are getting in around noon for check-in day today. Obviously, practices start tomorrow as well. So really looking forward to seeing these guys, in action against the best on the best. But for now, man, I'm really looking forward to getting a bagel, like you said, Bobby.
That's not a bagel. That was a biscuit the size of my face. Hey, tell us a little bit about who all's showing up down there in Orlando that you're waiting on, CJ.
Yeah, on the offensive side of the ball will be Jarrett Gibson, running back out of IMG Academy, and Daniel Cruz. And then Texas has a great group of defensive backs with Jordan Johnson-Rubel, Kobe Black, and Xavier Filsaime, as well as Colin Simmons and Zena Umeozulu up in the front. So 7 guys in total right now for the Under Armour All-American Bowl game, and it's looking like Texas is going to be very well represented come noon whenever all these guys start filling in.
They don't do it. They don't separate those teams regionally. Like there's not a north, south, or east, west. Do you know how many Texas players are going to be on the same team, or is that going to just kind of be dispersed kind of evenly?
Yeah, I looked at it earlier. I looked at it in the airport this morning. I wish I could remember who was on which team, but it's 3 and 4, so they split it up almost perfectly. I know Colin Simmons and Zeno Umeozulu are on the same team, which is obviously intriguing for the sense that seeing them on the same defensive line is going to be very fun and exciting for what eventually will be a duo or tandem that we'll see on the 40 acres.
Hey, Blake, the other thing we need to touch on, if we get a chance, is Texas could be getting a commitment, or it sounds like Texas is likely to get a commitment from Deuce Williams, a linebacker, edge prospect out of Shadow Creek down in Pearland in the Houston area. Williams is a two-sport athlete, not only a varsity starter in football where he plays off the edge, but also one for the basketball team. Another one of those multi-sport athletes where if you get a chance to watch him, go watch him on Huddle if y'all get a chance. His name is Deuce Williams. He's another one of these long-armed defenders that, I mean, he and guys like Derek Williams and Jelani McDonald, I mean, they are the spitting image of one another almost in that long-limbed, long-armed kind of category that Steve Sarkeesian and Pete Kwiatkowski seem to identify and want in their defensive players.
Well, the other thing we need to talk about, Bobby, is Oklahoma last night. Oklahoma and Arizona. you, of course, called a 3-touchdown win for Arizona. You were close, but they won by 14. But what was y'all's thoughts on that game?
Turnovers, man. Jackson Arnold couldn't keep the ball in his hands. Fumbled, threw a couple picks or a few picks. I feel like it gave me a sense of what Oklahoma is going to look like a little bit next year, though. I will say that. Seth Luttrell is a different play caller than Jeff Lebby, first and foremost. He's more of that traditional air raid type, throw it to the backs, whereas Lebby is more that power, veer and shoot type guy that off the Art Briles tree. I would say that Oklahoma's defense probably played better in the middle section of that game than what was expected. You look at that; Arizona only had 29 yards rushing. I thought Oklahoma's defense was dominant for stretches, and then Jackson Arnold couldn't quit turning the ball over. What did you think, CJ? And I want to get into talk to you a little bit about Jackson Arnold as a whole, because he's the heir apparent there. We need to talk about him as a quarterback a little bit too.
Yeah, no, it was an odd game. Arizona starts out on fire. Obviously, a quick touchdown, a couple interceptions right off the bat. They're up 13-0. It looking like they're going to dominate this game, and then out of nowhere, Oklahoma goes on a 24-0 run, and it kind of felt like that game was just going to be that. Oklahoma running away with it, not letting it get close, and then Arizona follows up with a 25-0 run of their own. I don't know how many times you see a 24-25 nothing run consecutively in the same game. So a true game of flipping the switch and who's on, who's off. But yeah, the turnovers were an issue. And my thing there with Jackson Arnold and, having covered Oklahoma a little bit, pretty recently, I get a sense of what their fans want at the time. And there were times this year when, the offense wasn't necessarily clicking against Cincinnati, Iowa State, some of these games where it just didn't feel like it was the Oklahoma offenses of the past. There were, Oklahoma fans calling for changes right away. Let's get the freshman 5-star reps. Let's get him in the game. He's going to be the answer. It's not Dylan Gabriel, because what we've seen so far isn't what we expect at Oklahoma. And I don't get it. You got a 4-year, 5-year, starter with 1,400 or 14,000 career passing yards, and you want to pass that up to a kid who, albeit has a lot of talent, but hasn't ever really proved it. This is what you get when you start young quarterbacks, and you don't start young quarterbacks over kids that have 14,000 career passing yards and have been in the same offensive system for 5 years. So it never made sense to me, and I think Oklahoma fans got a little taste of, oh yeah, that was a stupid idea to bench a 5-year, starting quarterback for a true freshman. Who would have thought? Turnovers would have been an issue for a young quarterback. But yeah, Bobby, I mean, you mentioned it. Big issue. And I think it's the speed of the game, at least the first 2 interceptions, just late on passes over the middle, on the outside. That's what happens. But yeah, you mentioned it prior to us going live today, but I want to hear a little bit more about your take on the interceptions and obviously the fumbles as well.
Yeah, he's not. Look, I definitely don't think he's a top 5 quarterback or anything like that. I know he's ranked real high. The issue he has, and he has a lot of talent, but he's a spot thrower that's used to being in a system. And so he's not a guy, I mean, in a great system, by the way, like not just an average system. He's a state champion quarterback, et cetera, knows where he's going with the ball at all times. And he's a little bit of a innovator on the run and scrambles, and he runs really well. But I don't know that he's ever going to be an A-plus passer. He just doesn't have that look and feel to me. For Sooner fans, they definitely have a quarterback. I don't know that they have a great quarterback that they were hoping for. That's my take on it. I don't think he's Quinn Ewers as a passer for sure. I don't think he's Arch Manning as a passer. And so they're going to have to win with the people around him playing smart football going forward. And that can be done. I mean, I think they're recruiting well enough, especially on defense, to help that happen. But another thing I wanted to mention, Brendan Thompson last night had the former Longhorn had a big touchdown catch for them to open up the second half. That was interesting. He just ran by everybody. It's like, I think that's the second or third time he's done that for OU. Anytime he comes in the game, just expect the deep ball because he's going to run by everybody.
I also felt, Bobby, that they didn't do him any favors, though. Seth Luttrell just completely went away from the run game when they were having success with it. And as you said, he's not going to be a great passer, and they're having him throw 40, 50 times. I don't think they did him any favors last night in the late third through the fourth quarter.
No, there's a reason Seth Luttrell got fired at North Texas. I mean, I'm not trying. No coach is perfect, right? Yeah. And I'm not. That's not a dig on Seth Luttrell. It's just, Sark's gone away from the run game in the second half before, where people are like, "What are you doing?" And what happens is they feel like they have to be balanced to keep the actual run game, the threat of it there, to be balanced, and then ultimately you can't do it, and you get behind the chains, and that it's like a domino effect of sorts. You get behind the chains, so then you have to throw. So then that takes the running game out of it automatically. And we'll see how that works out, Blake, long term for them. I think Seth Luttrell is going to be a fine offensive coordinator. He's not, I don't think he's great, but I think he's good. I don't think he has quite the system that Jeff Levy did, where it can stress you if you have great players playing that role and can't defend it. It's just a different type of offense.
For sure. Well, another bowl game that happened yesterday was the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and we have a super chat about it. KD35, I am the best, says, what did you guys think of the Pop-Tarts Bowl? Edible mascot and all. Obviously, it was Kansas State and North Carolina State. Kansas State, of course, comes out on top. But what was y'all's thoughts on that, including the mascot?
I can't tell you much about the mascot. I will tell you this. I like Avery Johnson's future at Kansas State. Talk about a quarterback that does have plus traits, like plus traits in one capacity or another. Avery Johnson as a runner has plus traits, in my opinion. And so, Kansas State, I can't say much about it. I prefer the cinnamon sugar Pop-Tarts. That's about it. Other than that, I couldn't tell you much.
I liked it. I thought it was one of those cool kind of twists on the bowl game. We see it with the Cheez-It Bowl every now and then. Obviously, I think it was oh man, I can't even think about but I mean the Tony the Tiger Bowl. I mean, things are just getting out of hand, So, but those images of the trophy, the Pop-Tart trophy, getting eaten afterward, a little eerie. But man, I enjoyed the game.
Hey, that's what we should talk about, our friend Jerry Hamilton and his desire. In what he told us that he would put mayo on his corn dogs. Y'all remember that?
Yeah.
Well, the Duke's Mayo Bowl was another one. I think Mac Brown lost that one, by the way.
Yes, I was going to say, if you're a head coach and that's probably not a game you're too upset about losing. If you're about to get dunked with mayonnaise, I'm okay with that.
Oh, I forgot about the mayonnaise and corn dogs deal. It still blows my mind to this day. All right, Bobby, before we move on, I'm going to let you tell everybody how they can escape the insurance trap with BKCW.
Yeah, absolutely. Our friends over at BKCW, big fans of the show, and we appreciate their sponsorship each and every week here on Texas Football live stream on Coffee and Football. Did your business have a frustrating insurance or employee benefits renewal? Most likely you didn't hear from your agent all year, and then right before it was time to renew, they delivered the bad news of a rate increase. When this happens, the agent is providing no value, and you're stuck in what we call the insurance trap. BKCW takes you out of the insurance trap by providing you with actual risk management consulting, not just price quoting. Operating out of their headquarters in Austin and owned by a UT grad, BKCW uses a 5-step process to identify your business's weak spots, design a plan, execute it, and monitor your situation throughout the year so that you can lower your insurance costs and effectively manage your company's risk. BKCW has already helped some of the most well-known construction companies, restaurant groups, breweries, and nonprofits in Central Texas escape the insurance trap, and it all starts with a risk-free assessment. Go to bkcw.com or send an email to info@bkcw to get started with a free risk assessment for the new year or claims audit and escape the insurance trap.
And we want to thank them for sponsoring each and every Friday right here on Coffee and Football. And guys, plenty of time to get your questions in, so please do so. And we're going to go ahead and jump over to questions. Actually, we got a super chat here from Travis. Thank you, Travis. He says, no matter what happens Monday, this has been an amazing season where we accomplished more than I could have ever hoped. Finding you guys has been the cherry on top. Hook 'em. Well, thank you, Travis.
I got to be when we entered this year, I thought 10-2 was realistic. I thought a Big 12 championship was realistic. A college football playoff berth, I wouldn't have put as realistic. I would have said that's a wing and a prayer. So I actually talked to a reporter from the Washington Post yesterday. They called to interview about Texas and what Steve Sarkeesian has done over the last 3 years. And if you really sit back and look at it, from 5-7 to 8-5 to 12-1, that's one thing. But the way he's remade the roster, the way he's used not only recruiting and overcome obstacles in recruiting, and getting last-minute commitments from guys like Kelvin Banks and DJ Campbell, and getting Quinn Ewers, the transfer from Ohio State, almost immediately after a 5-7 season, CJ. Those things, it's just like one little thing after another has been positive. And he keeps built those. There hasn't been a lot of steps backwards. Like, that's how he's gotten from point A to point, I don't know, where are we at? We don't know yet, but it's how he's built this in a way that I told the guy this, I think it's a sustainable model, what he's created, because now he's to the point where he's finding more good players to put up against it. And we talked to Rod Babers about it as well. They're starting to stack talent, which, you know what, they may not make it to the college football playoff every year, even with the expanded edition to 12 next year, but they're going to be in the conversation. They'll be among that top 10, top 15 programs. In the last 10 years before this, they hadn't been among the top 10 or top 15 programs. They'd been maybe among the top 25, right? Maybe among the top 30. They're now hitting this area where they're going to be 10 to 15. And if they keep getting quarterbacks like Ewers and Manning and whoever, Lacey maybe next, or Owens, if they keep stacking those quarterbacks with the talent, with Steve Sarkeesian's play calling, that's where this is all going. And so I agree with you. It's been a fun ride. For me, it's been surprising. Very, very surprising. What did you have, CJ? I never talked to you preseason about this. What did you have preseason for Texas this year?
Yeah, I was a little different. I thought that Texas had the talent. I thought Texas had the quarterback. I came into the year kind of thinking, if it wasn't this year that Texas didn't win the Big 12, I don't know if they ever would have gotten over that hump. And that's, obviously a tall hill, a pretty broad claim. But when you looked around the conference and kind of saw where teams kind of stacked up and fell talent-wise, it looked like Texas was going to be the clear favorite to win the conference. And they were coming into the year. They were the consensus number one team in the Big 12. I think they were the highest-rated team coming into the year in the AP poll at number 12. I thought coming into this year, it was all about putting the product on the field and no more what-ifs. Clearly, they've done that. And aside from 74 seconds in Dallas, they've put together, basically a perfect season statistically, in the win-loss record-wise. So I do think a point that you made, Bobby, about continually taking that step forward is important, because we've not necessarily seen a regression from a year-to-year approach. So I think that's really important moving forward, and especially coming off of this year, which is still obviously can still achieve a lot of greatness.
Yeah, CJ, this is my point, right? Is how often do you see a team or a coach come in and it's just been steady incremental improvement? I mean, it's very, very rare. I mean, there's always steps back, and I guess you could consider some of the close losses last year as steps back, but really in the grand scheme, it was just part of the process of learning how to win. And so, especially off the field, let's talk about, I mean, on the field, there's going to be ebbs and flows, but off the field, there has been no ebbs and flows. It's been a steady incline. And I think that's what's led to where they're at right now. And frankly, I'm pretty sure that's why everybody feels the way they do right now about the future of Texas football. It's not, there hasn't been this major hiccup off the field, has there? I mean, unless I'm just missing. I mean, getting Quinn Ewers, then signing Arch Manning 5 months later or whatever it was. I mean, it's just been this steady incline across the board off the field.
And to your point, I mean, how encouraging is it that you lose locker room leaders like Bijan and Roshan and DeMarvion Overshown, Coburn and Ojimo, and yet you're still here talking about how improved the locker room is as a result of the culture that they left over. I think that alone, Bobby, is something that Texas fans should look at and say, whether or not they win Monday or move on to the national championship game, that alone is what's going to propel this program into continually being in the mix for the playoff.
All right, guys. Well,
hey, Blake, I got to take a call real quick. Okay. I'll be right back. I promise.
You're good. All right, CJ, we're gonna do this together here for a minute until we get back from Bobby. Obviously, something very important there going on. But let's start. I'm trying to think here. We'll do some recruiting stuff since you're out there in Orlando looking for recruiting and or looking at recruits. Excuse me. David Williams says, I really hope some of the Texas recruits can practice and play well enough to get increases in their recruit rankings, specifically Alex January, Trey Owens, and DeAndre Robinson. I'm a huge Alex January fan. I think he's severely underrated. There's no way that I don't even remember how many defensive tackles are in front of him in a lot of these rankings. I don't believe there's that many better ones than him. But what are your thoughts on that? And do you think we will see some of them increase after these games?
Yeah, I think all three are guys that you can look at and see it. Yeah, it's justifiable to see a rankings boost at the end of the cycle. Trey Owens specifically, and it's a good quarterback class nationally. Not many quarterbacks above Trey Owens. Threw for 44 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Beat Katie on the 6A high school playoff picture as well. So Trey Owens, I think, is a guy that will certainly see a ranking increase. The other guys, and it's tough for defensive linemen, especially on the interior, to really stand out unless they are just flinging bodies across the floor. That's one of those things where coming into cycles, if you are a big camp kid or you go to showcases very often, that's normally where you start seeing your rankings come in. And unlike, some of these guys in the class, I don't think DeAndre Robinson was a big camp kid. I don't think Alex January was either. But to January's credit, he just won a state championship in which he was, one of the top 2 players on that entire defense. A complete mismatch in the interior. Like I said, flinging bodies around, making big plays in the backfield. All 3 of these guys have been named in that underrated category that we have talked about previous shows. So I think it's encouraging whether or not they see that boost, in the rankings or not. Texas fans should know that those guys are all very talented and steals, in my opinion.
No doubt about it. All right, Bobby, welcome back. Everybody's hoping that you're bringing good news.
I don't have news that I can actually divulge, other than there's some things going on in the portal right now that could be interesting. I'll just put it that way.
A little tease for all the Texas fans out there. Yeah. All right, guys, we got a super chat here from Juan. Juan says the last 4 college football playoff champions won by defensive-minded head coaches. Y'all's thoughts on that?
Okay. I mean,
yeah.
not without who won them. Yeah, not without good offensive firepower.
Yeah.
Georgia had a great defense, but they scored. How many did they score against TCU? I feel like that's the people need to understand it. Even though you're a defensive head coach or an offensive head coach, I feel like, what is Jim Harbaugh? You consider, he was a college quarterback, pro quarterback. Do you consider him an offensive head coach, or do you just consider him a head coach?
Well, he's kind of in that GM, but offensive minded 100%. You don't see many guys that are defensive minded throwing routes on air to begin, warm ups. So
right, that's my point though. Is I don't necessarily I don't believe in that. I think it can go in different categories. Of course, Saban, would he win one of those, and Kirby Smart win the other two? And that's Georgia and Alabama more than it is offense or defense. It's just a lot of talent all over the place. I will say this is interesting. Adonai Mitchell has a chance to win his 5th consecutive college football playoff game and his 3rd national championship. Think about that guy. How many of his, we talk about, blessed, living a blessed life. He leaves Georgia, the 2-time defending champ. Everybody at Georgia is telling him, why are you going to Texas? We got a chance to go 3-peat here. Why are you going to go there? They were 8-5 last year. And now Adonai Mitchell's sitting there going, I'm in the college playoff, and you're at the Chick-fil-A Bowl or wherever you're at. So I feel like that's kind of that you never know how things are going to turn out. Everybody was saying, why is Adonai Mitchell transferring to Texas? Well, I think that he's one of the reasons why Texas is where they're at, taking the onus off of Xavier Worthy to be the man and the only downfield threat for the Longhorns has fundamentally changed Steve Sarkeesian's offense. And Mitchell has just been terrific this year.
Yeah, Blake, he's basically the Will Smith of college football. 3 teams, 3 World Series the last 3 years. So I'm sure Texas – we're obviously lucky to see him in a Texas Longhorn, New Jersey, and you mentioned it, just how impactful he's been. Incredible.
For sure. Hey, when you were saying that, Bobby, we had a comment here from Lee Chadwell. He says if Texas beats Washington and Michigan beats Bama, then Texas would actually have an opportunity to beat all 3 college football playoff teams in the same year. Interesting.
That's crazy.
4 weeks of football.
Yeah. I look at that. What did y'all think? Like Arizona in the Pac-12. You watched that game last night, and I was trying to think, what does this mean to Texas in the Washington game? Is there anything you can extrapolate from that game that would matter to Texas as it relates to, the game itself, right? Like what could you see from Oklahoma, Arizona that would be meaningful to Texas, Washington? The one thing I would say is how easily Oklahoma ran on Arizona. And that's a takeaway. And it's also a takeaway how easily Oklahoma got to the quarterback at times. And I don't know, if you look at, similar situations with Washington, if that means that's an easier conference to get, or a harder conference, easier conference to run on people against, first of all. And second of all, do they have great pass rushers in the Pac-12? Of course, Washington has at least one, but overall, do they have one? The defensive end for UCLA comes to mind as another one, right? And so I'm just trying to, I was trying to, as I watched that last night, I was trying to extrapolate what it would mean. How does this play in? Because I've seen Texas play Oklahoma. I don't know. I feel like the Washington run defense may not be as stout as some people are thinking. That would be my takeaway.
Yeah, Bobby, we mentioned it earlier, Arizona only ran for 29 yards too. So it's kind of that trench warfare that is so, I guess, coveted in the SEC. You hear about it all the time in that conference. I think Texas has done a good job of getting the trenches prepared for the move to the SEC. Obviously, we've talked about Sweat and the offensive line this year. That's looking like something where there could be a bigger gap than originally anticipated, especially following the Joe Moore kind of crowning to the Washington offensive line. So I think that is one of those things where Texas has been battle tested against good running teams this year. If that game was any indication of kind of the style of play Texas and OU have compared to the Pac-12, that favors Texas tremendously.
And guys, I'm going to bring up when they played each other this year. As you can see, Arizona ran for 110 against Washington. Washington ran 111 against Arizona. But I don't know. I mean, that's an interesting thought, Bobby. I was actually kind of thinking that too last night. What could you take away from that?
Yeah, look at Washington on money downs there too. They're so good. 6 of 10 on third down, 1 of 1. They were 7 of 11 on money downs. I mean, that's a tremendous offensive scheme or play caller, and a guy that can execute at a high level with the quarterback. 7 of 11. That's absurd. Texas has got it, and Texas is that's plays to Texas's strengths so far this year, getting off the field on third and fourth down. Texas has been tremendous in that regard. So it's going to be strength on strength. 7.2 yards per play, by the way, there for Washington. That's really, really strong. 12 penalties.
Yeah,
that's what stuck out.
That's what I wanted to mention. That Washington commits a lot of penalties. They're 128th in penalties per game committed, and 131st in the entire country in penalty yards per game committed. So that's bad. And the fact that they're 13-0 and can overcome that, credit to them. But in big games like this, where you're giving up 75 yards of penalties, that's big.
Hey, I want to add this. It was clear they weren't Big 12 refs last night. 3 holding calls on the Sooners in the fourth quarter.
6 in the game.
Just putting that out there. It's clear, very clear it was not.
Yeah, it was SEC official.
Not a Big 12 crew. 3 Oklahoma holding penalties in the fourth quarter on their offensive line. Just saying, where's that been all our lives?
Yeah. When's the last time you saw that?
I haven't, for 20 years. Even though that between Oklahoma and Texas Tech, I don't know that there's more egregious holders on the offensive line in college football. It's just been forever, and they never get called.
No,
I'm not saying Texas is perfect. Texas holds sometimes too, but OU and Texas Tech have been holding and not getting called for it for decades.
No, I agree with you. And they better be ready because that was an SEC crew last night. So you better start fixing those issues now is all I got to say. All right, guys, we got another super chat here. This one from Hook on 4863. And he says, any comments on Venables' comment? Sorry if this is redundant. Of course, Venables before yesterday's game said Arizona might be the best team that they played all year. And Bobby, I know we touched on this earlier in the week, but I'm going to let you take this one.
The best team Jackson Arnold faced all year. That's what I mean. Look, if Dylan Gabriel's the quarterback in that game, how big does OU win that game? Probably. Seriously, take away those turnovers. That led directly to 21 points for Arizona and an enormous amount of time of possession, etc. OU had a good game plan on defense for them. They just had too many turnovers.
All right, this next question, guys, is from Bevo Nation. He says, are there any injury updates that Texas fans need to be aware of? Are they fully healthy? What's the deal?
They're fully healthy. I mean, I talked to folks that were at the walkthrough yesterday or at the media availability yesterday. Texas is fully healthy right now, as healthy as they've been all year. Xavier Worthy, I mentioned this at the outset, was running really well yesterday. Austin Jordan is back on the field as well. Longhorns are at full go right now. Offensive line looks healthy. Kelvin Banks had finished the season a little nicked up. He looks back ready to go as well. Christian Jones had some issues. You remember that late in the year. Was out one game. I think it was against Kansas State. He played a little injured the rest of the year. He's healed up. They are as good right now as they've been all year long. Of course, I think that, listening to some Washington comments, their running back, Dylan Johnson, had been banged up late in the year as well. Now they're saying his foot is returned and healed. So it's not just Texas that's healing up. It's both sides.
Yeah, I think that's one of the benefits of this longer, break in between the playoff games. Is that, so I guess for both of y'all, is that something that y'all are fans of how long there is a break to get these guys healthy again? Or do you like seeing these guys, get back into the swing of things, pretty soon?
I think the NFL playoffs is the best, where you have 1 week off.
Right.
And then get back after it, because 2 weeks off or 3 or 4, I think it just blows up maybe the rhythm that your offense has, the rhythm that your defense has, the rhythm that your team has going in and out of workouts, etc. I would love to see the games come, like the college football playoffs start, 2 weeks after the end of the conference championship games. That's the way I think it should happen.
I think it's a double-edged sword. I mean, in a way, it is good to get everybody healthy, but momentum's everything in college football or in any football. And you lose that momentum when you're off 4 weeks. I mean, that's just a long, long time for sure. All right, guys, we got another super chat here. This one from Gage Sheets. And Gage says the Big 12 has won in the trenches in every bowl game besides transplant UCF, which makes Penix comments dumb. Kansas State rushed for 257 yards versus the 14th best run defense.
I think it's a great point. And I think, real quick, Bobby, I just think there's always been a perception about the Big 12 that they don't play defense and they don't have, that top tier talented, trench play. The defensive thing has been proven wrong over the last 3-4 years, obviously, with the change in style of defense. The scoring is still there, but that's more to the credit of the pace of play, I would say. The points per drive are down across the entire conference. And the trench play specifically, I think in that Kansas State game. And I want to tip my cap to Cooper Beebe, because I think he's one of the best, offensive linemen that have come through college football in the last 10 years. That man is incredible. And, to end the game the way that they did, with him pulling over the right side of the offensive line and pancaking 2 guys to get the first down to seal the deal. Credit to him and credit to Kansas State, because that was a fun game. And it was cool to see, just kind of how that game wrapped up a really, really impressive 2-time All-American career for him. So I think that's a great point by Gage. It is a change in the way that the Big 12 is being perceived. Inside the Big 12, I think they know it. Outside the rest of the country, they still think it's that old Big 12 of 70 to 65 games, that we used to see back in the day.
The Big 12 does a great job of scheming defenses. That's what I always have thought. And I feel like NC State yesterday was not ready for the quarterback run game. They just didn't respect it. It's hard, and it's hard to simulate or emulate that in practice, right? Until you get to a game when you have a quarterback that can all of a sudden run faster than a wide receiver. The elements change in life, right? I do think that the Big 12 runs the ball better than people give it credit for. It's not just a passing league. Stopping the run is a different category, because I think it all depends on the run schemes and what teams can really do. Like Georgia, for example, last year against TCU had been a really good run defense, right? Well, Georgia just said, we're going to play action off of it, and you're going to have to respect that, and these guys crashing down. And then all of a sudden they're able to run the ball in the second half. You know what I mean? When you had a big lead. And so they put those 2 big tight ends, not only Brock Bowers, but Darnell Washington in there, and he just absolutely pulverized every TCU defender. I think that what I'm getting at there is the Big 12 teams tend to be good running teams, not just passing teams. I mean, you take Oklahoma State is a great example of that, right? I mean, you think they're a great passing team because that's what Mike Gundy does. And then Ollie Gordon goes for 1,700 yards, whatever it was this year. And you saw what he's able to do against A&M in crunch time, by the way, not just when it didn't count so much. So I feel like people underappreciate what the Big 12 does from an offensive run game perspective.
And to your point, Bobby, I was just looking it up while you were talking about it. 2 of the top 3 rushers in the nation, Big 12, 3 of the top 6, 6 of the top 19. 7 of the top 25 all come out of the Big 12. And that 7th one, Jonathan Brooks, who lost, a lot of game time.
4 games essentially.
So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with that for sure. All right, guys, we're going to move on here. And, Bobby, this is one that you can answer from Great Dane. He says, is On Texas Football doing a live stream for the game?
You know it, man. We'll be on. I'll be on. Rod Babers be on. Aaron Hogan as well. CJ's going to be at the game. I think I'm going for the first half, and then coming back to the place I'm staying at here to do the in game to finish it up. But look, we're going to be on all day Sunday. Basically, we got the 8 a.m. coffee and football on New Year's Day. Then I'm headed over to Manning's, the sports bar, where we're going to have. Right now, I think there's over 1,500 people, close to 2,000 people signed up for this party for Texas folks. Texas Sugar Bowl party, TexasSugarBowl.party.com, or no, TexasSugarBowl.party is the URL if you want to get a ticket there. But my take on it is we're going to be on from like 10 to 4, and then I'm doing the pregame with the Horn with Rod and Aaron for the radio back in Austin. It should be an all-day affair, and it should be an all-day fun thing. I mean, don't forget also, I want to add this in. Deuce Williams is supposed to commit on that day too. We're trying to find out what time that is right now and get that involved. But that's the linebacker out of Pearland's Shadow Creek. And so it should be a newsy day. It should be a fun day. We're going to have some former players stop by during the day. So I think upwards of 10 to 15 of them are going to be on with us throughout the day. So it'll be a rotating group and it should be fun. We might even have a patriarch stop by during it, whose name happens to be on the building. But we don't want to say exactly that 100% yet, but that's what we're being told.
There you go. All right. So, well, let's take this question from Glenn Keller. He says, Bobby, is there any difference in feel between now and the Georgia game in 2018? Obviously, both of those Sugar Bowl games, but with the players, fans, etc.
More sustainable success. Better. Look, CJ, you and I were around for this. Tom Herman, you never got that feel like everything was kumbaya. Everything had to be the hardest way possible to get things done, right? Steve Sarkeesian is ultra competitive, as competitive or more competitive than Tom Herman, Charlie Strong, Mac Brown, all of them. But he doesn't make everything, the hardest way possible. And so, yes, it's fundamentally different. I think the players like their coach. That would be a start. I'm not saying every player didn't like Tom Herman. The majority of them didn't. That they like their position coaches, and I think that Herman tried to play good cop, bad cop a little bit with his players. So that's one. Two is Texas was 10-4. There's a difference between being 9-4 going into a bowl game and being 12-1. The expectation levels now on the program, I think there's a clearer roadmap to becoming an elite team. And I do think that the fans, I don't want to speak for everybody because there's over 1,000 fans here right now, and you can speak for yourself. But I think that Steve Sarkeesian and what Texas is doing is much easier to root for right now than they were under Tom Herman, even though I love Sam Ehlinger. So, and some of the players on that team, don't get me wrong. I think Sam was as easy to root for as any Longhorn ever. The reality of it is, though, the head of the snake is the coach, right? And he sets the tone. And so I feel like when I'm talking to people and thinking about it, I have a better pep in my step, essentially, because of how I feel it's being run and who it's being run by and how he treats people and how he talks to the media even matters, right? He's not just calling somebody the punter, right? I mean, there's no slight tweaks like that. That just, are just nothing more than mind games. I feel pretty strong about it. And that's the difference. And that's nothing to take away from, guys like Joe Osai Sam Ehlinger. It's nothing to take away from those guys at all. Connor Williams. It's just it's the way I feel about it. Connor Williams or Sam Cosme, I can't remember, but I hope y'all get my drift.
All right, this next question from R. Charnell. He says, does Derek Williams being out in the first half make Sark take the ball to start and theoretically limit Washington's first half possessions?
Sure makes sense, doesn't it? Just kind of on paper, maybe. But I do think getting that ball to begin the second half in a game like this where you can double up a possession at the end of the half is something that, we've seen Bill Belichick make fools of NFL coaches by doing this, seemingly every meaningful game that he's ever been a part of. If you're able to do that in a game like this, it can turn a deficit into a lead in the matter of about 5 minutes of game time. And that's something that you really, really value as you enter the second half, in my opinion. I'm always a fan of taking the ball in the second half to start and just working the clock at the end of the first half as a result. I know Sark likes being aggressive early, but I don't know if that will have an actual factor in whether or not, Texas ought to take the ball to begin the game.
I think they'll defer if they get the opportunity. To CJ's point, it's the middle fours, right? The last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half. If you're the one with the ball for those 4 minutes on both sides of it, you're dictating the tempo and the pace of the game and what the overall game looks like.
All right, guys, this next question here is going to be from E. Kim. He says, the Texans use some of what Arizona State did on defense and use it in their game plan and scheme. But I do want to follow that up with this comment from Qwerty, as he says Penix was sick and vomiting on the sidelines against Arizona State that night. But they did have some success regardless. So what do you think we'll see?
That was a weird game. It really was. I went back and watched it because anytime you see an offense like Washington not score an offensive touchdown, you're thinking, what did that team do that stopped? And there were 2 fumbles from Washington receivers. Penix threw 2 picks. Both were, at least one of them was a late shift in the defensive formation, which kind of led him to believe something was astray. I think Rod and I talked about that in Talking Ball, where teams will show something late. And Penix, having been in this system for so long, will think pre-snap, I already know where I'm going, as a result of being in the DeBoer system for so long. So that is something I think Texas can take away from that game, but it's not something that you can do, every single snap. You got to switch it up. And obviously, Penix is smart enough to pick up on tendencies and kind of trickeries as the game progresses as well. But that game was weird. I think it was wet as well. So if Penix was sick and vomiting, I think that kind of plays into the weirdness of that game. And, it just nothing was ever really fluid and rhythmic for Washington offensively in that game.
All right, we're going to move on to this next one, and it is from Great Dane 0213. He says, I know we still have a big challenge against Washington, but who are we rooting for between Bama and Michigan? I feel I'd rather play Michigan, but it would be fitting to beat Saban in the championship. Who would y'all rather see if you're Texas?
Oh,
I think I'd rather see Michigan.
Yep. I'm with you.
And I'll tell you this. I mean, Alabama will have revenge on their minds. Michigan might be overconfident as opposed to Alabama when playing Texas. Alabama's going to, they beat us earlier, so this is kind of revenge oriented, and they're going to run Jalen Milroe differently this time than they did last time. I would rather play Michigan. And go strength on strength because they do have a great offensive line. Texas does have a great defensive line, and see where we come out.
I'm right there with you.
I'll say this. I don't think Michigan has a good secondary, particularly they have a great corner. I would not be a Michigan fan unless I could get pressure against Quinn Ewers. Because the Michigan secondary is not as fast as the Texas receiver group. That's the real key. And so if Texas can protect Quinn Ewers, I like Texas in that game if they ever play Michigan.
CJ?
No, I'm with Bobby. I think you take the strength versus Michigan strength. It's a much less dynamic offense. It's a more consistent offense, but it's not something where if you're out of position by a half step, you're not getting beat for a 60-yard touchdown too often. And I think you take that chance more times than you don't. Michigan is who I would root for in that game.
All right, guys. The Green Lantern says, with a month to prepare, I think our special teams will make a game-changing play. Whether it's a block kick or an explosive return, we can win the special teams matchup. What do y'all think? And while y'all are talking, I'm actually going to bring up, I actually tweeted about this yesterday, the special teams rankings between both teams.
Yeah, I mean, look, Washington actually has, a theoretically just as good, if not better, special teams unit than Texas. I do think that the blocked kicks could be there. There's the blocked punts, right? 3 for Texas, none for Washington.
Well, they're tied for third, Bobby. Tied for third
tied?
in most of the nation.
I thought Washington was not ranked.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. As far as the rankings go, this is the team rankings for special teams out of all Division I teams. I'm sorry.
Did Texas have 3 or 4 block punts this
But I
year?
do believe it was 3.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that could be, you mentioned block punts to Green Lantern, and I agree with that. I will say this. Rod Babers mentioned this, and I just completely agree with it, and something that everybody needs to hear. Rod thinks that one of the ways that things can change in bowl games and games like this is you don't practice special teams because the coaches aren't having guys go out and do full collision on special teams leading up to a college football playoff or a big bowl. And so while everybody else, the offense will go head up in full speed against the defense and vice versa, special teams won't do that because they don't want to risk injury this close. And so he thinks that special teams, you can see a big punt return, you can see a big kick return, because they're not practicing at full go. Special teams right now. No team is. Not Texas, not Washington, not Michigan, not Alabama. So he thinks in any of these games, special teams could be a real factor that you're not necessarily contemplating.
All right, guys, we'll move on here to the next one. And let's see. Stephen Smith, when is the best time to announce coach contract extensions? Obviously, it's going to be after the playoffs.
2 weeks before signing day. That used to be seriously, back before there were 2 signing days, right? And it was always the first Wednesday in February, it was always the magic day was like January 15th. So I don't know when it will be for Steve Sarkeesian, but I've been told that is going to be in the works, is already in the works. But, obviously they don't want to bother too much, although it's all done by agents, right? They don't want to bother too much right now.
Bobby, before we move on, I'm going to let you tell everybody about BKCW.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say thank you to these guys. They've been very helpful for us and supported Coffee and Football throughout the year. We just started Coffee and Football about 4 or 5 months ago, and it seems like it's been going on a long time. But the guys at BKCW have been very helpful. They talk about something called the insurance trap, where someone just tells you what you're going to need at the very last minute and doesn't really consult you or give you a chance to maybe save some money or be better equipped with what you need from your insurance. Operating out of their headquarters in Austin, Texas, and owned by a UT grad, BKCW uses a 5-step process to identify your business's weak spots, design a plan, execute it, and monitor your situation throughout the year so that you can lower your insurance costs and effectively manage your company's risk. BKCW has already helped some of the most well-known construction companies, restaurant groups, breweries, and nonprofits in Central Texas escape the insurance trap. And it all starts with a risk-free assessment. Go to bkcw.com or send an email to info@bkcw to get started with a free risk assessment and escape the insurance trap.
All right, guys, one thing that we have not done today that we've done pretty much all week is talk about the slate of games that come on today and tomorrow. And I'm going to bring up the schedule here for both of those. and let's discuss it for a minute. We start off with Clemson and Kentucky, and then Notre Dame and Oregon State, and those games kick off here in 2 hours. What do y'all think?
I love having a full day of college football, even on a Friday. Yesterday was awesome on a Thursday, just sitting around. Games kicked off at 10 o'clock Central Time. I loved it. And this is what makes bowl season so much fun for me. That first game, Clemson, Kentucky, couple things. It's the last chance this season to watch Cade Klubnik, who I really thought was going to have taken a bigger leap forward this year for Clemson. I know that there are deeper issues right now with that offense. Not necessarily a whole lot of playmakers, which is a bit surprising from a team that has been so, nationally relevant as Clemson has been. So I want to see just how he's able to kind of finish the season heading into 2024. And then obviously Mark Stoops, who almost felt like his Texas A&M job was just pulled right out from under him. How does his team respond to that? How does he come into this game focused for, a team on paper and kind of nationally, perception-wise, is a bigger, badder program than his at Kentucky. So that's what I'm really looking forward to. And then I love Missouri tonight. This is a game I don't think Ohio State gives two cares in the world about being in. Obviously, Kyle McCord is not there. I love Missouri. I think they're still 6-point dogs. I mean, that's a game where Cody Schrager, he might hit 250 tonight. He's that good. If you don't know him, get familiar because he's been one of the nation's best and most exciting running backs this season.
I love Luther Burden, the Missouri wide receiver. They've got a dynamic offense, and they throw the ball around well. If they can, the only thing there I would add, CJ, is they've had problems pass protecting at times against good defenses. I figure Eli Drinkwitz will try to get the ball out quick, even though Ohio State does not have much on offense or as much on offense, given I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is sitting out. McCord's gone. The defensive players, though, aren't sitting out for Ohio State. And so they still have a pretty vaunted defensive front. I do like Missouri in the game, too, though. I think Missouri has something to prove, whereas Ohio State's not even happy to be there. And if that's the case, I would take Missouri. I'd take that team almost every time. Iowa State and Memphis is interesting, too. We know how Iowa State ended the year on a little bit of a run after Texas took it to them a little bit. But Memphis, a better team than some realize. I don't, Notre Dame, Oregon State. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know.
I've got something to say about that game.
Go for
it. I've been on the fence of bowl games. Just I don't care about them as much anymore, and that sucks because I love bowl games. I love college football, but that's a game I point to and I say, who's the quarterbacks for both teams?
Right.
Like, who's playing? Like, why these they don't care. It sucks, and I think it's losing a little bit of its luster, a little bit of its magic. Where again, I've sat here for 14 hours the last couple of days just watching nonstop college football of teams I don't necessarily really care about. That's a game. I don't know who's going to be starting on either side of the ball. I don't know who's going to be opting in. The head coach for Oregon State, not even there. Quarterback, right. I mean, that sucks to me. And so I'm hoping the 12-team playoff kind of eliminates that. Obviously, it's going to be more meaningful football, and I'm all here for that because right now I think college football is heading down a path where, I mean, half of the games just no one cares about. And I think that sucks.
Hey, look at Saturday's games. Just looking at them. Ole Miss, Penn State. I mean, that has a recipe for a pretty exciting game. It's basically the Ole Miss offense versus the Penn State defense, right? The last time Ole Miss faced a defense as good as Penn State's was Alabama, and Jackson Dart and Lane Kiffin got absolutely shut out.
And they got shut out bad.
Yeah. And then the nightcap or the afternoon cap there, Florida State, Georgia. I mean, Florida State's down to their third string quarterback, right? Not even their second string quarterback. Tate Rodemaker entered the portal and is not playing. Keon Coleman not playing. The tight end that they had. I mean, they're just. It's one of those things, to your point, where bowl games unfortunately, if you're not playing for the marbles like Texas is in Washington, you're not seeing the full meal deal of what reality is. And with the transfer portal now, you're seeing quarterbacks leave. I mean, the backup quarterback leaves before the bowl game. What does that mean? I mean, it doesn't make sense at all. Like I guess it does. It happened to Texas with Malik Murphy, but Malik Murphy wasn't scheduled to start either, right? I mean, Tate Rodemaker would have started for Florida State, yet transferred. I mean, what do you play college football for? To actually play college football?
I don't know anymore. I don't know.
It pisses you off a little bit, right? Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what you're getting at, and I agree with you. It makes you mad because it's kind of soiling the game, right? And taking away. Luckily, we're at Texas right now, and we don't have those problems. Out of sight, out of mind. We got a game on Monday that matters.
Hey, Bobby, Casey wants to know, did you see the story in one of the bowl games yesterday that North Carolina State starting quarterback played 4 games, then asked to be redshirted so he could transfer? I did not hear that. It doesn't surprise me anymore, though.
I did not hear it. My thought process on that is, I understand trying to save a red shirt and all that other stuff, but then to red shirt so you can transfer. I mean, at what point do you sign up to be part of a team? That's what I'm getting at. I mean, I understand individual circumstances and exceptions to the rule, but look, your team needs you, dude. Step up.
Yeah.
It's not, there are certain things that are more important than yourself in life.
All right, guys, we're going to move on to some more Texas-related questions here. We got a few in while we were talking about those other games. Captain Americano says, do we see an unexpected wrinkle from Texas in the Sugar Bowl? What would you like to see Texas do to catch Washington off balance?
There's always going to be something. And if I knew, I'd be on the coaching.
You got an airplane going over top of you, CJ. I would say this. I'll add an element. How about, it's been 3 games since we've seen Texas go with the big tight end package with Malik Agbo to establish a run game. What if we see that sometime on Monday? It would not be unlike Sark to pull something like that out of his hat if he saw an issue with the UW run defense.
And to your point, last time in a big game with the magnitude of this, Oklahoma, guess who scored a long, lengthy touchdown? Gunnar Helm, wide open too. I think it was a 4th and 2, 4th and 3. I mean, that's one of those things where if you're not fully aware of it and cognizant of the tight ends on the field at the time, Sarkeesian's going to pull that out of the bag and get you with it. So I like that play there, Bobby.
Yeah, well, here's what it won't be. I bet it won't be a pass to Byron Murphy or Tavondre Sweat. How about that? They've already used up those. They may try one of those throwback passes to Kelvin Banks or something. I don't know. I mean, I'm more interested. I will say this. I mentioned the offensive side of the ball for Texas in that category. What are they going to do that surprises Washington on defense? Kwiatkowski used a lot of his bag of tricks last year. Right? I mean, Arch Manning red zone package might be interesting, given the quarterback run game. I feel like, and what I'm getting at here is, what is Pete Kwiatkowski going to do different that can kind of just, you're not going to be able to completely stop Washington, right? But what you need to do is to slow them down some, get them to punt. If Washington punts 4 times in this game or 5 times in this game, that's a win. You agree with that, CJ? That 4 to 5? I mean,
just think about how much Texas has punted over the last couple of weeks. I don't think they've punted 4 times in the last 3 games. It's been that consistently good offensively. Those extra possessions are something that I don't think you can overcome if you're an opponent playing Texas right now.
All right, guys, we are going to move on. We got some more here. Greg Givens says, can we take a moment and talk about the lack of national respect for the Texas offensive line? How did they come in 5th for the best O-line in the country? Washington better be ready.
Absolutely underrated. Go ahead.
I agree with that. And that, CJ, give me your thoughts on this. They returned all 5 starters this year. Cole Hudson got injured at the beginning of the year. DJ Campbell stepped in. They're better across the board than they were a year ago. They're more experienced, but I think they're moving people more. I felt like last year they were just getting in front of people at times. I feel like they're actually moving people now. I'm interested to see if that has an effect against Washington. I think that could be a key to the game. If Texas, and we talked about this, guys, I said run for about 160 in this game. If Texas could run for about 160 in this game, Texas has a great chance of winning. Great chance. And so I feel like the offensive line has that within their capacity to do so. And I'm not sure Washington respects the Texas run game, because what Washington did to Texas last year and completely thwarted the Texas run game. It's a different offensive line. And I will say this, Christian Jones, it sounded like from his media availability, like he took it personally. And like the Texas offensive line is taking their poor performance a year ago personally. So I'm anxious to see exactly what they come out with against Washington on the O-line in the run game.
All right, Joe, we got time for just 1 or 2 more questions. And let's take this comment from Jethro. Jethro says, I think Ewers is going to shred Washington and whoever he faces in the national championship game. He has a problem from reading the three high defenses, and these teams don't play that very much.
You talk about wrinkles. That might be a wrinkle PK tosses in there every now and then. It's been so effective this season against teams all over the country, really, in the Big 12 specifically. That could be something Rod talks about all the time, how much Texas likes playing quarters. If you really want to throw a wrinkle into the preparation of Washington, and how about a little, 3 high? I think that could be something. But yeah, no, I'm with you. I think Ewers does have a big game. Another thing, I mentioned the penalties from Washington. They have 4 cornerbacks, 4 defensive backs with 4+ penalties on the season so far this year. Texas only has 1. So they get grabby. They hold a lot whenever there's guys beating them down the field. I think, if the big plays aren't falling, there will at least be some grabbing and some pulling, which will go in Texas's favor.
All right. And then we will do this one at this will be the last one. And Jason wants to know, how much will this extra month of practice help next year's team development? Bobby?
So there was actually a study done, I'm quoting a study that's 10 years old. Okay. So, but that's the last one I've seen on this kind of issue. Teams that play in bowl games more likely play in bowl games the next year. And part of that is because they get an extra month of practice with their young guys, right? It's not so much like, think of Arch Manning in the last month has gotten he's going to end up 15 extra practices. That is a full spring practice schedule. You get 15 spring practices. So your backup quarterback's more prepared. Your young receivers are going to be more prepared. Your young defensive backs will be more prepared. That's why it matters. It's definitely important. I don't know that it's going to make them a playoff team next year or something like that. But, success begets success for a reason. You get more reps.
And then I lied. This is going to be the last one. So just because it goes with the conversation, Shane says, do y'all think the practice schedule helps in Texas' favor with the game at nighttime?
And what you're talking about there is Texas is practicing in the afternoon and Washington is practicing in the morning. Both are at the Superdome. I actually don't think the practice time matters, because what Washington is doing, I guarantee you, is they're doing walkthroughs at night and team meetings. I mean, Texas is having position meetings in the morning, then going through it, and then having meetings again in the evening. And they're using they're not using the hotel lobbies. They'll basically, those big meeting rooms in hotels, they'll basically just clear out of any chairs, and that'll be a huge team meeting room / walkthrough situation. I don't think it matters that much. I think the big key is it's inside the Superdome. So you're playing and practicing on the surface you're going to play and practice on, right? That you're going to play on. And so, particularly for quarterbacks, CJ and Blake, quarterbacks want to know if it's a crowned field versus a flat field. If it's, where are the spots that I need to, it's just that sort of thing matters more than the timing of the practice.
Yeah, and to your point, receivers, DBs, balls in the air, punt returners especially, that's one of those things where in a dome it doesn't really change. So as long as you get a sense and an idea of where the lights are and how everything kind of shapes up, when the ball's up there, I think you're going to be set for when the game is actually kicked off.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode. But for Bobby, real quick, tell everybody what they can expect later today on Texas Football and throughout the weekend.
Well, CJ is out in Orlando, as you guys can see. He's going to be visiting with a lot of signees that Texas has 7 in all at the Under Armour game. We're going to also be live at 3 to 4 today. Myself, CJ, and Rod Babers, and then tomorrow we have a round table of sorts. Myself, Rod Babers, and Bob Shipley give our picks for the game on Monday, and then later today at some point, I'm eating this big biscuit that I got this morning from Mother's, the breakfast place at in the French Quarter area. It is literally the largest brisket. Largest biscuit. Look at this breakfast. What I ate this morning, I will not eat again the rest of my life. A crawfish étouffée omelet. Can you believe that? That's what I had this morning. I'm not going to eat again until like 4 or 5 o'clock tonight. There's no way.
I need some of that in Orlando. I'm going to go hit a McDonald's.
Orlando's food is very homogenous, I guess is the right way to say it. If Mickey can make it, it'll happen for you down there.
Oh, man. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football presented by BKCW. I want to thank them for sponsoring today's show. I want to thank all of you for tuning in. Thank you for the super chats. Of course, as Bobby said, we'll be back later today with a lot more football action. And, of course, through the weekend and then back on Monday for a very, very exciting episode of Coffee and Football before the Horns take the field. So for Bobby Burton and CJ Vogel, I'm Blake Monroe.
Blake, one thing. Hey, I'm out and about, and if you're out and about in New Orleans and happen to see me out, make sure you come up and say hi. CJ and I and Blake all feel the same way. If you guys see us out and about, make sure you come up and say hi. Love to talk football anytime with folks that love the burnt orange. Just want to add that if you see me out and about in New Orleans this week.
That's right. All right, guys. Well, once again, thank you for tuning in, and be sure to hit that like and subscribe button as well. We would definitely appreciate that, and ring the bell so you're notified anytime we post a video right here on Texas Football. And for Bobby and CJ, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you Monday morning.
Welcome.